Hello and welcome! You're listening to Bobbacast Sessions, a spin-off podcast hosted by Fusio, where we will be focusing on some of the hot issues that are taking place throughout the mass multiplayer online game for teens, Habbo Hotel.
Let's talk about tax, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be coming to Habbo 2020. That's right, this episode is all about tax, specifically the marketplace taxes we are to expect when Habbo Beta launches this week. One of the hottest topics of Habbo 2020 seems to be the sheer amount of ways Habbo seems to be trying to create sinkholes for the credits in the economies, from increased taxes to charging to essentially kill pets, just so that you can spend credits and buy new ones. Everywhere we look, it seems as though Habbo is trying to figure out how to extract the most money from players with as little effort as possible, with no real thought as to how these changes are going to impact the economy overall. Now, there are so many different cash grabs popping up in the new version of Habbo that it's hard to look past them, even to get excited about some of the new and interesting and presumably free features that are being implemented into the Habbo 2020 client. Starting with the marketplace, Habbo is already walking on shaky ground because they've removed the core trading features, leaving only the marketplace operational at the launch of Habbo 2020, which makes it odd that they have implemented so many large changes to the way it operates. There are, of course, some really interesting and positive changes. You can now list multiple of the same item rather than just having to post individually. You can search by category. The limit on how many items you can list has also increased, and you can choose to make your listing public or select a friend to share the offer with, so it's only going to go to them, though that part will be coming later when trading, or the new version of trading like that, is implemented. But with the good comes the bad. Now, we need to acknowledge, at the start of beta, Habbo implemented a 10% upfront tax, regardless of whether the item sells or not, rendering their new Recall All feature a waste of money for any user who wanted to utilize this feature. This was somewhat reminiscent of a ticket system that was in place in the early days of the marketplace, but the price to participate is much steeper than what it used to be. When tickets were used for listings, any upfront cost, regardless of the listed value, was 0.2 credits per listing, as the tickets were purchasable in 5-for-1C bundles. Now, we've increased to 10% here, and that's a lot of money and no guarantee that it will sell. And this was critiqued by former Sulake designer and producer Solka Haro, who heard about this over Twitter. Now, that's something that we'll be exploring further with our first interview with ParratonPekka coming up shortly, but the result is that the 10% upfront fee has now been wiped. This 10% fee has now been absorbed into the back end of the sale, and there is a new fee based on the value of the item you are listing, resulting in a combined total tax of 10% or more depending on the listed price. Habbo shared examples of a listing selling at 20C, which resulted in a 9.5% tax, with users receiving 18 credits of revenue. The next example was for 1,000 credits, which brought in 905 credits profit and a tax of 9.9%. And finally, they showed an extreme example of 60,000 credit sales, where an expected revenue would be 36,600 credits, resulting in a tax of 39%. Now, for years, Habbo has established the minimum tax as 1 credit, and this results in a 50% tax, which is an insanely high amount, on the lowest sale point items that you can list, 2 credits. As if 50% wasn't enough here, if you sell an item for the max listing price on Habbo 2020, you're actually going to get taxed 60%, and that's more than that 50% tax you see on 2 credit sales. The effects of these high-priced taxes across the board are likely to result in users not trading, and perhaps that is their goal. If users don't trade items between each other, then they are instead forced to buy directly from the marketplace. My assumption is, though, that it's more likely to result in traders quitting. Sure, Habbo is not going to have a circular economy where the same credits go around and never truly lost, but I highly doubt traders are going to be spending real money on credits for a game that took the enjoyment out of their pastime. I could go on, but that would be boring, so I'm going to let ParratonPekka, our first guest, do this for you. Now, he's a prominent member of the Finnish community and has been very vocal about these Habbo 2020 changes, writing essays for Twitter and Fusio.net, just to name a few. When I asked him if he wanted to come on the podcast, he offered to write us another statement, which has been voice doubled by Allyphobia. So, Parraton, what are your thoughts on the marketplace and the changes that are coming to it in Habbo 2020?
I won't go into too much detail about the current problems that the marketplace has when it comes to how it's coded currently. I try to centralise more on how it's fundamentally impractical to all Habbos as the only way to sell and buy their Fernie, except for catalogue, of course. I'd first like to address how the marketplace was before the forthcoming removal of trading in some ways a better option than trading itself. If you had an urgent need for some fernie, you had the possibility to get something from the marketplace. In this sense, it was reason that the marketplace has a tax.
So basically you're being taxed for convenience more than anything else. Does that mean that trading is worthless, as the marketplace can be a more convenient way to sell without having to find people and hunt for a bargain?
On that note, Sulka, an ex-employee of Sulaki, who pretty much himself, to my knowledge, invented the Habbo marketplace and was truly one of the pioneers for virtual economies, which he has made a few statements about this. He says in one statement that removal of trading will suck out most of the fun of trading. It's a super risky move, and he will be surprised if most people into collecting won't just churn as a result of the change. He also noted that the whole marketplace was also designed to operate alongside of trading, and he would make extensive changes if it intended to be the only trading place, commenting that the trading feature was great for rewarding people working in rooms. The trading is a building block for so many social interactions. Finally, in regards to the original upfront fee, Sulka made a statement about the pay. Non-returnable fee will guarantee the market is half empty at all times and remove most of the pricing competition. Really bad for buyer experience. Someone hasn't read up on how auctions really work. Soon after this, Habbo removed this update and has then used it as a strategy to tell all Habbos that they truly listen to their feedback. However, I would suspect that if Sulka hadn't have stood up and that they hadn't done the removal, the timing of the decision was really odd.
Perhaps these comments from Sulka were a wake-up call for the game. While on the surface one might assume that this solves a lot of the marketplace taxation issues, the upfront fee was only half of the issue, and people are having these kind of hiked prices for using the auction-inspired trading system already. Do you think that this new marketplace is going to be better than the old marketplace, and do you think people will still use it with all these high taxes in place?
Honestly, no. I think the Habbo 2020 marketplace is not better, but it will be actually the only way to sell your fernies, and the taxes are truthfully really shocking. The developers have also changed how the taxing works a couple of times, and to be really honest, I haven't had time to keep up with it anymore. In the latest beta release notes, it's mentioned that they rearranged it. The user XXX887 from Habbo.fi has made an excellent tweet about how much tax he has paid over the years based on the GDPR data. Having sold 5,882 fernie, he has paid 6,732 creds in tax over the last 10 years, removing approximately €600 worth of credits from the Habbo economy.
Yeah, many users have wondered why Habbo is increasing the taxes when we are already paying tax on things like Marketplace, Credit Fernie and the likes. What was a €600 loss to the economy over the last 10 years would have been increased tenfold under the new regime, which is charging between 10 to 60% of the sales price for the transaction instead of the 1% tax with a minimum of 1 credit that we're used to.
To me, as a builder, the marketplace, however, has more of a fundamental problem. Currently, Habbo has about 10,000 different fernies. If you force all of them to be put to marketplace, how in the world do you suppose to find them? Users pretty much have to know every fernie line by name and even fernie by name to find what they want. I have checked that, for example, Habbo.com seems to have about 6,000 to 7,000 fernies listed on average currently, and it's obvious that the amount will raise in January 2021 if nothing changes.
Yeah, and I think they've made it harder to click fernie in rooms as well on the Habbo 2020 Unity client. Instead of being able to tell what an item is just by clicking it, which is what we do currently, users are assumed to know that you must hold down the Alt key whilst clicking in order to get the item name and description. It's not intuitive at all, and there's no guides, as far as I'm aware, set up for the launch of this beta this week.
Think about it. You have to scroll over and over and over and over again these thousands of fernies in order to build your room. If you haven't got a perfect image of the room before you start building, it's deluded to think anyone will ever build anything again. It will honestly take you too much effort for you to then not even want to bother. You also have to think of the new users, for example, that have nothing. At least we old users have some fernie on our account.
At least we know what the old fernie lines are.
It is nicer to shop in rooms. To have to figure out what fernie you need without room shops and things like that, it will be horrifying.
So what do you think these changes are trying to achieve for Habbo if it's detrimental to both the trading community and the building community?
My opinion is that they're trying to force people to buy Builders Club. If you are not aware, after 31st of December 2020, if you edit your room with floor plan editor, the room becomes literally a trap. They force you to buy Builders Club every month only to keep your room open. I won't even try to predict the consequence here.
Thank you so much for your comments, Parraton. It's really appreciated to have your voice heard. Next up, we'll be talking to MonkeyManBubby. He is a .com player that's been playing for years with experience in agencies and fan sites. And what he loves about Habbo is its community, its builders, its creators, its social media influencers, its agency lovers, mastermind traders, and fan site followers. It's a community that he thinks is so strong that it determines the future and shape of Habbo. And that's why he's come on to join us today to talk about Habbo 2020. So we're starting off simple. Straight up, what do you think of the new taxes on Marketplace, which charge between 10 to 60% of the sales price?
To be honest, I don't even know where to start. The lack of communication from Habbo, the uncertainty and the number of changes those features undergone is quite mesmerising. I believe on the whole, people are content with their current marketplace. And yeah, we hear the occasional murmur of complaint to the 1% tax. We have to appreciate that tax is essential in any economy, including Habbo, to create a circular economy without extraordinary rate of inflation. However, I struggle to see why you'd change a fully functioning feature, a very undisputed one.
Do you think that perhaps their decision to change the marketplace comes with the lack of time they've left to plan out and execute this new Habbo client?
You know, when quite clearly you're stretched for time with development of such an essential release like this. And, you know, that's resulted in the absence of, you know, several key features. Suleki is a money-making company, but to the point at which a company is jeopardizing its users and their stream of purchases, we have to consider whether Suleki is going down the wrong path. And I think that's why so many people are discontent, but genuinely concerned with the game they love and have played for, in some cases, over 15 years. Taxation, it's a consistent method of taking credits out of the economy. It's really important. Habbo will continue to release credits through purchases, and therefore, without taxes, the value of a credit would steadily fall. But to be honest, like, people are going to leave the game, you know, and that has the same impact. Rares and credits trapped on their account will in turn, you know, help to reduce inflation of the credit. And with some of the features that Habbo's releasing, the changes they're making because of Habbo 2020, we're definitely going to see the increase of this happening. Some key players have already announced their departure from the game come Habbo 2020, and that's before it's even come.
So one of the reasons that's been consistently cited as a reason for these tax increases is to reduce black market spending, trading, and discourage it altogether. Perhaps with the exodus of people leaving the game, they're worried that these inactive accounts will no longer be a coin sink, but will revive the economy through black market avenues. And so therefore they're trying to get to it before the player base leaves, especially with the switch between Flash and Unity. I guess it makes me wonder, as they make all of these changes for the Unity client, whether it's taxes or not, are they actually trying to keep the core audience they've currently got, or are they trying to drive us away and welcome a new audience, alienate the people who have supported them for years? Because when we saw Shockwave transfer to Flash, we did have a large amount of players leave the game, and perhaps they've seen that and they're trying to preempt that with these taxes of up to 60%.
A tax of up to 60%, I say up to because obviously it varies, is ridiculous, to be frank. We're at 1% tax rate at the moment, you know, round up to the nearest credit. There's a big difference between 1% and 60%. It just defeats the purpose of the marketplace, to be honest. High-value items will quite plainly be too overpriced to smoothly sell in the new environment. When users are being overtaxed for almost everything they're doing, whether that's spending, you know, credits to send a pet off to holiday, you know, basically deleting their pet, or to create a new group because they can't edit their current ones, people won't have the luxury of spending fortunes on overpriced limited editions, which will in turn, you know, reflect the tax rate on the end purchaser. I think that's like more likely than the seller, and you know, that's happened with the current system, with the 1% tax. That's mainly reflected on the price at which the item sells, and has a smaller impact on the seller and a greater one on the purchaser, which is why, you know, people tend to try to trade in-person via rooms because you don't have the tax. But yeah, I can quite easily see a shift occurring from rares and limited edition listings to primarily low value tap, because, you know, the tax rates can be much smaller. In turn, this is going to reduce Habbo's rares and limited sales from the marketplace, which obviously, you know, is kind of self-defeating, because in terms of monetization, the idea of stocking red tag items is going to be extremely risky in Habbo 2020. You know, the most high value cases, an increase in value up to 60% will be necessary for it to become economic to sell via the marketplace.
See, I think it's interesting. I don't think they want valued items to exist. I don't think they want the value of items they're selling to go up either, but it does take out a large chunk of money that's being spent on the game in order to go into buying rares. And sure, these items do retain their value pretty well, and maybe that's not something they necessarily want for fear of black market trading, but it also means that there's going to be less of an incentive to spend in order to obtain that, say, Robo face or that really cool mermaid hair. Like, people are not going to need to spend that amount of money because that sort of thing isn't going to exist anymore under this new model, presumably.
The new marketplace model would have been terrible alone, but with a temporary removal of one-to-one trading and the poor communication that has gone alongside it, I think, you know, that the future is definitely uncertain. But I think it's important that we also remember, you know, as illustrated by a number of people, these changes aren't being made by the staff that we see active on a daily basis, you know, the social managers, the community staff. These decisions being made by the executives of Habbo, and for that we need to be held accountable. The CEO of Saluki, the people that are making these decisions, should be more clear. They should be taking into account their users' feedback. And although I do believe the future lies ahead for Habbo, the only people that are capable of tidying that up are the people that caused it in the first place.
So originally the marketplace had a 10% flat fee for every item listed and not necessarily sold on the marketplace, but this has now been changed to a 10 to 60% tax at the back end of the sale. Are you glad that they moved this tax to the back instead of being a listing fee for all items?
Oh yeah, completely. The idea of having an upfront fee is, you know, extremely foolish. The number of times I've personally listed something and they haven't sold, even when priced at a reasonable price, I'd struggle to see how that would work, and I struggle to see how they came up with that idea in the first place. Yeah, it's great, you know, they listened to their users, they changed it. Whether that change was enough or not, you know, that's a question for another day. But the excuse they used when releasing that feature in the first place was extremely disappointing. I think their excuse was something along the lines of it was trying to ensure that people are listing their items at a reasonable price, which they then labelled as scamming, so to say, or trolling. But it's great to see them changing things. I wish they would have had the common sense to establish that obviously that wouldn't be feasible before they started communicating things, because people are confused, and having an uncertain community is going to end up in people leaving, and no one wants it. The game doesn't want it, nor do the players.
So, confusion aside, do you think that these high taxes, when they're discovered, 10 to 60% of a sale price on the marketplace, do you think that's going to result in a lack of items being sold through the marketplace, which kind of defeats the purpose of it in the first place?
Funnily enough, I think when Habbo came up with these plans, I think they were planning for the tax to mainly influence the person selling the items, to try to get them to list their items at a more reasonable price. But I think a majority of this tax is going to be reflected in the final listing, and the person buying the item will have to some extent, shell out the credits to make up for this tax. I think, as I said earlier, there will be a fall in the number of high-value items that we see on Marketplace, but I think we'll still see a lot of listings of lower-value items because the tax is going to be quite mere for them. And some, you know, listings, this tax change won't really affect. For example, the listing of a 1C item, and to the point at which, you know, you hit the 60% tax rate anyway, you're going to need to be quite a high travelling salesman achievement level. And for that reason, I think people will continue to list items, but I think the type of item that we see listed will change. I think if people want a rare or a limited edition, they'll be mainly reliant on buying it from the catalogue when it's first released, and the idea of hoarding items until they increase in value I think that will slowly fade away, and it might come back once we see one-to-one trading re-established. But obviously that's all dependent on the tax rates that feature has, because essentially, these tax rates are going to dictate which items sell and which items don't sell. A change from 10 to 60% tax rate is a lot, and although selling an item for a 2C and having a 1C tax seems like a lot, you kind of, you expect that to happen because it's always been that way. But thinking that if I wanted to sell one of, my best rares, I'd be looking at potentially losing out on 60% of its value is ridiculous, and so I wouldn't personally list a rare. But I think that will vary from person to person, and if people are quitting, then, they might be listing stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that you don't think people are going to have the travelling salesman achievement. The amount of items you need to sell on the marketplace to get the top tier is only 200, and while that's a lot for someone who's grinding to get it on day one, if you're listing casually over time, you're going to get that pretty quickly and pretty easily, and I think that's why they've made it that number. As someone who has definitely traded for years, though, it is a bit frustrating that they're not just sort of backdating that number. It has to be redone from the start of Habbo 2020 as far as we've been told, but I can also understand that they're trying to find a compromise that sort of hits a middle ground, and I don't think it's the only solution they need to find this compromise, but it's definitely a solution that is on its way to getting there.
I kind of like this idea, to be honest. It's definitely unique, but once again, the communication that's gone alongside it, quite poor. We don't know what's going to influence this level. We don't know if our activity prior to Habbo 2020 is going to influence our level once Habbo 2020 is released, or whether we'll all start at a level of 1 or 0 and, have an MP cap of 10C, or whether, the players that have been playing for 15 years, stuff they've done will influence their level.
But I think the people that have been playing for 15 years, that have had all those trades, are the people they're worried about leaving the game and using the black market as they exit.
If it is the case that stuff we've done in the past doesn't influence it, I think there will be a big difficulty.
Oh yeah, the marketplace will get crippled initially. There'll be nothing on sale, and everything that's on sale no one will want to buy.
To think that some people that currently have items that are thousands of credits in value but won't be able to sell them because quite simply the marketplace won't allow them to is a bit worrying. But obviously that's an assumption because Habbo hasn't really communicated to a great extent in regard to this feature.
Yeah, and that's a sentiment that seems to be shared by a lot of people in the community. Whilst they are very active on Twitter, as they have pointed out themselves, Twitter is a minority, and therefore if Twitter is your main form of communication, you are missing a lot of the Habbo population. There are so many players in the game who have no idea what is coming with Habbo 2020, simply because Habbo is choosing not to communicate as openly on their main client. We're going to continue now exploring the marketplace tax features, and we're going to talk to Window. You may remember him from the first episode of Bobbacast Sessions, where we talked about the Habbo group gate glitches. He's being interviewed today by Tommy from Fusio.net.
So, what do you think of the new taxes on the marketplace, which charge between 10 to 60% of the sale price?
I think it's a bit laughable, to be honest. It's not like what we've had before, where you list something for 1,000, there's 10C tax or something. It's not a lot what we've had at the minute for a long time, and for them to sort of increase it by that much, I think it's just a bit what the it's not really, I guess, liked by many people as well. I don't think anyone would be pleased about it. We should hope that they will, decrease or whatever.
Yeah, well, the recent update post on Habbo doesn't give hope on that regard. Alex wrote that they think they found the middle road, so I seems to be happy with the current situation, which is alarming, to say the least.
Yeah, we're just not getting a response off them from what we're saying to them.
Nope. Well, they did do some adjustments, so they moved the operation fee to the back of the sale. Do you think that's better, or does it make a difference?
What, like, see where you got to like post, pay to list something so at the back of the sale now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better, because like, what if you didn't actually have any coins to pay to list it? That's quite outrageous that you have to pay up front. But the fact that they've changed that, yeah, that's good, but it's still minor, but I guess that's a positive.
Yeah, so instead of paying 10% now, it's 10% at the end, but it's 10 times the previous tax, so it's not just doubled, it's 10 times.
Yeah, ridiculous, ain't it?
So, do you think these high taxes will result in a completely dead marketplace?
Well, I think some who own certain items, like, they probably just have them to keep now. It's not really attractive to sell it. Like, you know, the whole, like, buying and selling for profit, that just eats into your profit, so there'll be less of that. Mm-hmm. I think wise thing to have done, really, is before the update, like, get everything you need. Like, if you think you're still going to play, like, I don't know, whatever you use to build rooms, like grass, like, you know, like floor, like cabin stone, like just whatever you like, I guess it's good to get that before, you know, the update, because it might be dead, it might not, but I don't think it'll be as lively. You know, it'll kill the market a bit.
Mm-hmm. Would you yourself sell knowing these taxes are in place?
No, because is it like the higher the item, the more the tax or something?
Yeah, so for a 1,000 credit item, it's 10%.
Yeah.
And then for 2,000, I think it's like 15, so it goes up pretty fast.
Yeah, that's like, especially a lot of my more sort of expensive items or like furniture that I've got. Yeah, I don't think I'll want to sell at all. Or like, if I am, I'm just going to want more. And I think that'll be the case with everyone. I'm surprised like prices of certain furniture in game for like coins hasn't crashed as much as it has for like some rares. So I don't know, it'd be interesting. Will stuff like just drop after like this update? Because everyone's like, yeah, I'm just actually quitting fully, just selling everything. I know people already have, but I don't know. I won't.
So last week they announced a new achievement, Traveling Salesman, which limits the price you can list items for until you've had a number of successful trades. So you need 200 sales to get the maximum listing price. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that... Well, it's quite annoying to have to do, you know, because people have multiple accounts. They're going to have to do that on all their alt or storage accounts, whatever. I know a lot of people beforehand are probably like slimming down on how many alts they use because of like stuff like this and unlocking the vault. But people will still have that. That's a headache to have to do that multiple times. But even to do it once is quite annoying. Me personally, I think the plan is I'm just gonna boost it, like just go on my alt and like list a load of furniture and just buy it myself and just get it out of the way.
Yeah, so it's 200 credits to get that.
Yeah, I guess you've got to pay like to do that, but it's like, I guess some people pay for like achievements or badges, like, you know, the crafting ones. I'll try and think of it like that. Yeah, it's annoying, not great to have to do. If you want to do it legit, what if your stuff don't sell? Like the previous question, we were saying about the market being quite dead, not that busy. If it is, how are you going to get these achievements?
That's a good point. It's just another paywall. So do you have some other thoughts regarding the taxes or in general for the new client?
Every day when I'm looking on like Habbo Twitter and that, I'm just seeing like more new stuff like come up. Like I saw something about LTDs, like they changed the logo on like the limited rares, and like, are they getting rid of the number?
That's correct. There is no LTD numbering on the new client. The only number listed is the total number of sold ones.
That I think is quite outrageous, because for the whole time that these like limited rares have been out, people have like bought them based on what number they are. Like, you know what I mean? They've paid a different price for whatever number. Number one is quite expensive. So I think for them to change that after so long is quite bad, because it devalues a lot of current ones of them. One thing, I don't know if I've even seen anything about this. Is HC Payday still going to be a thing?
There is no interface for it yet, so not sure on that one.
Well, let's hope they're not taking that away.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Thank you so much to Tommy and Window for that insightful interview from the perspective of a trader. Our final guest today is Love in Idleness, also known as Hablin, who is previously a Singapore player and now plays on the .com hotel. He's been playing since 2005, and his favourite thing about Habbo is the simple yet concise pixel design and the little Habbos looking like Lego people. When asked to comment for this episode, he wrote us a statement, and this is being read out today by Hoopy.
Hey guys, I'm Hablin. I'm not a hardcore trader nor a very active builder. I'm just an ordinary Habbo who loves to chill and loves social aspects of the community and the pretty builds that I've come across on Habbo. Although I'm not the biggest spender, I have been buying Habbo credits with real money. I'm no good with stats, figures and breakdowns, so I shall paint a picture of how I feel about these Habbo changes by using analogies.
So, as a self-proclaimed ordinary user, what do you think of the new taxes on the marketplace, which charge between 10 to 60% of the sale price on the back end of the sale?
Daylight robbery. I understand that every business is out for profit, but to inform us of all these changes so last minute, just as Flash is about to go obsolete, when they already knew that 4 years ago, shows extreme poor planning and execution from the management. We are also in the midst of a pandemic right now. I came across a tweet from Snooze Habbo that expresses how I feel aptly. Habbo has made it abundantly clear that priorities are money-making, but what's disturbing me the most is the timing. The nerve to charge up to 60% more on some existing features while in the midst of a global pandemic is disturbing. The steep taxation scenario is almost a real-life imitation of the situation in the legend of Robin Hood, where the rulers of the land are imposing high taxes on the nation. It makes me wish that our own Robin Hood would appear soon, to steal from the rich and give to the poor, or rather in this instant, to help the corporate members of Sulaki find a reasonable middle ground between pleasing the community and generating profit.
So are you glad that they moved the upfront fee to the back end of the sale rather than having a 10% fee upfront every time you list something?
It is better that they've moved the upfront fee to the back of the sale, but almost nothing else the players need has changed. It feels like we're just playing shell game and no odds have been changed in our favour at all.
Do you think that these high taxes will result in a dead marketplace? Would you ever sell something knowing that these taxes are in place? And do you think that will make the marketplace harder for those trying to find items to buy like yourself as a builder?
The future of Habbo with the current management is uncertain. I've heard that there would be likely no player-to-player trading for the initial 6 months at least. Perhaps the reason for these sky-high taxes is to push people away from over-relying on the marketplace and to instead buy directly from the catalogue. As someone who also builds rooms, we also know that the catalogue fernies can be seasonal and lack the comprehensive range at any one time. The easiest way for builders to lay their hands on the fernies they need is either through player-to-player trading or to buy from Marketplace. Habbo has claimed that all its new features were implemented to stop the black market. However, from many of the tweets that I've read so far, Habbo has ironically removed all the important mechanisms that could prevent the manipulation of the market, such as the trade volume and sell price graphs, which help monitor price trolling, making it easier to manipulate prices with enough credits on hand. Additionally, removing up to 60% of the sale amount from the transaction of high-priced items doesn't help create a low-listing economy. It only drives prices up. Their actions and follow-ups, or lack thereof, do not match up to the reasons that they've explained to us. The reality is they don't want a free and fair marketplace. They don't care about that aspect of the game. They want to turn Habbo into a game where everything is stuck on the one account while still giving the illusion of being able to trade between players. This is a money thing.
And so finally, one of the latest additions to the marketplace is the introduction of the Travelling Salesman Achievement, which limits what price you can list items for until you've reached a number of successful trades, with a total of 200 needed to unlock the full potential of the new marketplace listing features. What are your thoughts on this?
I am totally turned off by this point to want to understand what a travelling salesman is. Does this travelling salesman sell ice cream? This is something that has been coded from scratch since the beta opened, yet they still have a 6 months estimated turnaround time on player-to-player trading. This seems a bit ridiculous to me. Habbo is making everything so complicated. I'm just an ordinary player who buys credits, do a small bit of trading, shopping to get what I want, and am not good at games. Habbo is supposed to be a chill game where everybody can find a place for themselves. It's not supposed to be intensive like an arcade game. At this rate, all of us need classes and even private tutoring in order to pass Habbo exams, in which the setters of the exam questions also have trouble explaining their questions. Despite some of their tweets, which try to explain new features or elements of Habbo 2020, they are not transparent at all. Instead, Habbo is finding every small excuse to charge us while stupidly not considering the value we bring to them as players. There are so many drastic changes and new protocols with no transparency. Some of these changes are stifling the community of their users by imposing a compulsory charge for the same features we have been using free for years, if they even bother to keep the features in at all. Who would want to spend credits to chill on a game that is not relaxing at all?
So there you have it. An activist, an agency and fansite member, a trader and a builder. These interviews looked at the opinions from all over the Habbo community to discuss the changes coming to the marketplace. And while some players will run with these changes that have been put into action, it's clear that the community isn't too impressed by these updates or the communication that comes with them. There are plenty more taxes coming to the new version of Habbo in Unity, and we'll be addressing some of these in future episodes. But for now, bringing a podcast together like this takes a huge team of people, so I'd like to extend a huge thank you to the Fusio team, today's co-host, Tommy, the episode guests including ParratonPekka from .fi, MonkeyManBubby from .com, Window from .com, and Love in Idleness from SG and .com. Thank you to our voice doubles for the episode, Allyphobia and Hoopy from .com, and the many people who have taken the time to interact with me on Twitter and in-game to help shape the questions of the episode. If you'd like to take part in any future episodes or suggest any future themes for this podcast, please let us know on Twitter. You've been listening to Bobbacast Sessions with Elise, also known as LC22 on Habbo.com. See you next time.